Welcome everyone to the first Equity Board meeting of 2022. We are going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. First and foremost, due to the virtual format of today's meeting, I'd like to start by just providing some quick guidelines, just because we have participants attending by computer and some may be attending by phone. And of course, we have our Spanish interpreters with us. So we want to be respectful of everyone's needs during this meeting. So I'm going to ask that all of our attendees please speak clearly and pause frequently so that all of our attendees can hear what you have to say. We want you to state your name before you start speaking, in addition to your pronouns. So my name is Shay. I use she, her, hers. And then, of course, mute your microphone while you're not speaking, just to be respectful of someone who is. And if you have any technical issues, please try joining with a different device. If you don't have a different device, please contact one of the board members and we will try to help you get signed up. And Monica, can I direct people to you if they need some help getting in? And then, of course, use the call-in information on the invite if you are still unable to get in via WebEx. Does anybody have any questions? All right, if we are all set, we're going to go ahead and move to our next agenda item. We're going to go ahead and ask if Monica knows of any public comments that we need to address.
Shay, would you like to do a brief roll call before public comments?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Let's go ahead and do roll call. And we're going to do roll call a little differently tonight, just because I want to be respectful of everyone's pronunciation on their names. So I will start by introducing you via first name, and then allow you to go ahead and tell us how to properly pronounce your name. Okay, so my name is Shay Fleming. I used to be Shay Curry, but now I'm Shay Fleming, and I use she, her, hers. The next person in our list, and I'm using the Equity Board, the Equity Board agenda to determine who's next on the list. We have Christina Abanse, and Christina is actually out today, so she will not, or I'm sorry, she's not out. She's actually going to be attending late. So we will talk with her later. Next, we will have Megan. Is Megan here?
I'm here. Hi. I'm Megan Richley. That's how you pronounce my name. Nice to see everyone.
Thank you, Megan. And we have Elisa.
That's correct. This is Elisa Stewart.
Thank you. Lorna, are you here?
Yes, I'm here, and it's Lorna Gilmore. Thank you.
Thank you. And Helen, are you also here? Monica, would you, is Helen out today?
I apologize. Yeah, I couldn't find my unmute button. Helen is not able to join us tonight. She's excused absent. She's traveling from overseas and she's stuck in airports, but she's well and safe. She will join us next time.
We will miss her for sure. Okay, and then we have Lucretia.
I also just heard from Lucrecia. She is she's absent tonight, excused as well.
All right, and then we have Ray.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Ray Manahan here.
Thank you. We also have Tony here.
Hello, everyone. Tony Curry here. My pronouns are he, him. And
Thank you.
As it's spelled.
And Jacob, are you here as well?
Jacob is also absent tonight, excused. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Preeti.
Hi, so my first name is pronounced Preeti. The T is pronounced like a TH sound, and my last name is Modi Pan, and I use she, her pronouns.
Thank you. And Kelly, you're the last person on our list. Oh, Kelly, you're on mute.
I'm going to always be the one who does it because I do this the least. I'm Kelly Munn, and she, her pronouns. Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who is in attendance tonight, and we will miss those who are not. If we are ready, we can go ahead and move to the next agenda item. Is that correct, Monica? All right, wonderful. Now we will ask Monica if we have anyone with public comments or any comments from the public.
So thank you so much, Shay. We did not have anyone sign up for public comments. We did, however, receive a written comment from the public that was shared with the Equity Board earlier today and with City Council. It is in your packet, and the person who provided public comment provided feedback and input on several or most of the agenda items for tonight. In addition, I do see one attendee in the audience, and I would like to ask if they have, I recognize the name, they are one of our staff members. They're also part of the equity team. So I would like to ask if they have a public comment, or perhaps they might be just here in attendance joining us. And Dale, I'm gonna unmute you in case you would like to. Just let us know if you would like to make public comment or just introduce yourself.
Great. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Just saying hi. My name is Dale Markey Crimp. I'm the management analyst of performance and budget for the team, and have been working closely with the human services team over the last few months, and I was unable to attend the meeting where the equity team members joined. So just tuning in tonight to listen in and keep up with the conversation that this board is having. And really, really grateful to be here and really glad that this board exists in Issaquah.
Thank you very much, Dale. We appreciate you being here tonight. And so with that, Shay, I think that concludes the public comment section for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate everyone's input. Now I'd just like to remind people of our rules for tonight. And then I'd also like to remind you that if you do have a question or a comment, please be sure to write question or comment in the chat. Please try not to actually write your question or comment in the chat. Just write the word comment or question, just to be respectful of those who are not able to join the video call or see that information. And then, of course, if you are joining us via phone, we'd ask that you press *3 in order to raise your hand and let us know that you'd like to make a comment or ask a question. So thank you for that. Our next agenda item is essentially going to be the approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any adjustments that I'm going to ask that everyone take a few minutes to review the agenda and then propose any changes that we need to make to it. Does everyone have access to that? Fantastic. And I'll give you all about a minute to review. All right. If everyone is in agreement with the and has no amendments or objections to the minutes, I'd like to propose that we unanimously approve it. Would someone please second for me?
I second.
Thank you, Lorna. All right. In that case, we are going to go ahead and move forward to our next agenda item. We are going to be speaking tonight with the Parks and Community Services Department and our good friend Jeff Watling. Am I saying that right, Jeff? is going to be presenting for us tonight, followed by Monica, who will go over our cultural and religious holidays, and Tisha, who will then go over our rules and regulations. And then Monica will return to help us with a conversation that we were having from a previous agenda. And I'm sorry, Jeff, if you're ready, would you go ahead and introduce yourself for us and begin your presentation?
You bet, Shay. Very happy to. Hi, good evening, everybody. Jeff Watling, he, him pronouns, Parks Community Services Director here with the City of Issaquah. Thank you so much for letting me be the first department to come and give an overview of what we do. And thank you for your service. Monica and I have enjoyed this journey together in seeing the formation of this equity board, and just couldn't be more thrilled and more thankful for all of you taking part on this, sort of starting this journey with the city. So tonight, my hope is in a matter of 12 minutes, maybe, providing you a quick overview and tour of what is the Parks and Community Services Department. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to stop me. I will try and answer those as we go, or you can certainly save them for the tail end. What's so exciting in sharing this overview is I've had the pleasure of being in the parks and recreation business for, boy, a long time now, 20 plus years. And I think one of the things that keeps me so passionate about what we do is we are very much an outward facing department. We interact with the community in so many different ways. And so I look forward to the conversation tonight. I look forward to really starting this relationship with all of you and really see the board and see the opportunities that we have in relationship building, and just ensuring that we are an inclusive and equitable in how we deliver all of our services. So with that, thanks, Monica, for the first slide switch here. To really, I guess, start off with what we do. We have two really core roles and purposes. We do a lot of different stuff, but it really boils down to two core things. We invest in places and we invest in people. How we invest in places is the department is the stewards of Issaquah's parks, trails, and open space system. So we are tasked and responsible with managing your stuff, managing your parks and your trails and your open space acreage. It's roughly about 1,600 acres of parkland reflected in that infrastructure. Then we also manage the public facilities that you all own. The community center, the pool, the senior center, and Pickering Barn are really the four primary recreation facilities that we manage, both programmatically, rentals. So much of that work is done through partnerships and through other nonprofits who we partner with, along with us providing direct services in that infrastructure. And then as we invest in people, that's really the programmatic side of what we do. We provide such a variety of programs and services that ultimately are the goal of building community, building individuals, building families, and just making this a livable place through programs and services. And that really runs the gamut from recreation-based programs to arts, investments and programs, and human services programs as well. And as I said earlier, all really through both direct service and also partnerships. So as you look at those two sort of core things of what we do, boiling it down to how we do it as a department, we're a very, very diverse set of divisions and work teams. I'm so proud to lead such a diverse group of professionals. We do a lot of different stuff, and it takes a lot of different skill sets to do that. So within our task of investing in places, that's really comprised of what was 3 divisions. It's now 2 divisions. I'll get to that. Our park operations team, park maintenance team, a team of 11 full-time staff and a myriad of part-time staff and other partners that really are set at the task of maintaining and managing that 1,600 acres that I mentioned earlier. We also have a park planner and a park planning and development group. Again, a lot of that is done through contracted work as well, that really focuses on how we invest into that park system. So the operations folks maintain it. The park planning and development folks really think about how we need to continue to invest and reinvest into that system to make sure it's meeting the community's needs and serving the community. That last group, city facilities, I need to update this slide now, Monica. Wow. In real time, city facilities, as of January 1st, actually transferred to a new department that's just been formed within the city, the support services department, which in many ways makes a lot of sense. That facility maintenance team really focuses primarily internally on maintaining city buildings, taking care of that infrastructure. And so they've transitioned to that new department. In terms of the divisions and work teams that focus on investing in people, again, I mentioned earlier, we have a recreation division and teams within each of these 4 facilities, community center, the pool, the senior center, Pickering Barn, also do a mix of youth and adult sports activities, a immensely dedicated, hardworking team that accomplishes all of that work. Another key division, the human services team, you're probably somewhat familiar with, but Monica Negrilla serves as the manager. Hannah and Amir are the 2 other staff. This is a relatively new division. As Monica and I, these last 2 years, have been working very, very hard and very, very closely, and really a community that's shown its support in diversifying and thinking more strategically in how we meet the human services needs in this community. So very much a very important touch point with the community. And then lastly, the arts division, arts team, Amy Dukes is the arts coordinator. She works very closely with an arts commission to look at strategic investments through grants, both programmatic investments in the arts as well as public art throughout the city park system. I should also mention, amongst that work team, you included as the equity board, we have 5 boards and commissions that really support and advise us in all of this work. So along with you, the equity board, there's the Human Services Commission, there's a park board, the art commission, and cemetery board. All give us really key feedback as we go. These next couple of slides, I really just want to take a quick second and sort of give you a tour of each of those divisions. What the bullets represent are highlights from some of our 2021 accomplishments, really just to give you a sense of what we do, what is the type of work that's done, and I think more importantly from an equity lens standpoint, how do each of these groups interface with residents in a variety of different ways. So the Park Planning and Development Group, some of the accomplishments in 2021, if you're familiar with Central Park up on Issaquah Highlands, that's a City of Issaquah park. We replaced some of the aging synthetic turf on some of the lower athletic fields there. As part of the pandemic, there was a real desire by the mayor's office and the community to look at how to make some strategic additional investments into our parks. We added some fitness stations at Memorial Park, or in Memorial Park, right near the senior center. The Sunset Trailhead, which is right off of Sunset as you're heading up to the I-90 on-ramp. We made some new, much safer trail connections there. You may be familiar with a 33-acre acquisition we made several years ago, known as the Bergsma property. It really serves as the gateway from Issaquah's city core up into Cougar Mountain and all of the regional trail system throughout Cougar Mountain. We were the recipient of a pretty sizable grant that helped us in that acquisition effort. So along with making investments, this team looks really closely at how can we leverage city dollars with other funds. We've got an effort going on right now that's looking at standardizing some of our wayfinding and park signage. Over the decades, we've collected, like many cities, a sort of a hodgepodge of various types of signs within our park system. So we're wanting to sort of standardize and create a more uniform look for both park signage and wayfinding. 2 of our small neighborhood parks, Blackberry Park, which sits on up on Squawk Mountain, or Hillside Park, which is up on Squawk Mountain, Blackberry Park, which is in the south Lake Sammamish community, are going to get some neighborhood park improvements. Next slide. The park operations team, as I said, these are really the on-the-ground managers, maintainers of our infrastructure. We had a new park operations manager position that came on board. We've launched a park ranger program. If any of you have been around the system the last couple of months, you might see Peter Walters out there. This is a really exciting program. I think that really focuses on making sure the park experience is safe for residents and for park users. Peter's also been invaluable in working with our human services team and being a bridge as we meet individuals who are experiencing homelessness, and how do we get them connected to services. So really important and exciting program that was just launched last year. Green Issaquah is a program that we got started several years ago. This is really taking a look at, when you look at 1,600 acres of parkland, a lot of that is forested open space. Green Issaquah is a strategy where we're really wanting to leverage volunteer time and volunteer energy in being really effective stewards of all of that urban forest. And in particular, how do we make sure that invasive plants, blackberry, bamboo, ivy, some of those other sort of nasty, noxious weeds that aren't so friendly to urban forests, we keep those under control. Any of you that might be dog owners, we're launched last year, and we're doing this year again a dog park tour, where we've sort of got a mobile dog park that we're putting at various parts throughout the park system. Ultimately, our goal is to identify 1 or 2 locations for a permanent dog park, but it's been an exciting effort, and certainly a large contingency of dog owners in this community. And last thing we did is similar to adding the fitness equipment, we've added pickleball to a number of our tennis courts, again, trying to diversify the park system and meet the diversity of needs with the limited amount of park space that we have in terms of developed park space. All right, is this an okay elevation? Am I going okay time-wise? I feel like I'm just bombing through this, but I will keep going. Switching over to our recreation group, and really again, investing in people. The community center team, I can't tell you enough, all of our service providers, all of our service groups have been so nimble throughout the pandemic, recognizing the modifications we've had to make in programming through the pandemic, but still making it a priority to find ways for residents to connect with each other in a safe, healthy way as those pandemic protocols have ebbed and flowed. Summer day camps, summer sports camps are a huge part of what we do. We offer a very traditional program, the Concerts on the Green. In 2020, we had to not do that because of the pandemic. There was huge enthusiasm by the community when it came back this summer, probably some of the largest attendance that event has seen. I think just recognizing this community loves coming together. We launched a new program through the pandemic. We call it Schoolhouse Rec. For any of you that might be of my generation, you might remember Schoolhouse Rock back in the day, a little play on that word, but this is a before and after school program that we launched in some ways through the pandemic, but now that we're back into normal school, it's certainly something the community has identified a clear need for. And then within the community center, we transitioned the flooring there to hardwood. We've seen tremendous interest in additional rentals there. Another thing that the community center has historically done and does an amazing job with is our youth advisory board. I think there's already been some degree of interface between the youth advisory board and the equity board, and definitely the community conversations we had, but great opportunity for some connection between those, your group and that group. Next slide, Monica. The aquatics team, same thing, just so many ways of showing their agility through the pandemic, and making that facility immensely popular, well-used facility, accessible for the community, both for lessons and lap swim. We also have a really extensive partnership with the Issaquah School District. Pickering Barn, very, very iconic building right by Costco. Again, a team that managed a farmer's market, continued to offer a farmer's market in a safe and healthy way through these last 2 years with the pandemic. Also a facility that is largely a rental facility and does a lot of weddings and other large receptions or corporate events. Next slide. The Senior Center. Historically, the Senior Center has been around for a number of years. For many years, 30 plus years, it was operated by a nonprofit agency. In 2016, that nonprofit agency needed to absolve for a variety of reasons. Rather than having that Senior Center be shuttered, the city was asked, and the recreation team, we quickly responded and began interim operations of the Senior Center in 2017, and have now are continuing to offer permanent services at the Senior Center. An amazing team, relies so much on so many partnerships throughout the community, both nonprofit groups and community groups. Again, pandemic was such a key time. So many of those relationships and connections with our seniors in the community. Did a lot of creative stuff with virtual programming just to make sure that isolation wasn't too much of an issue. But great to see the Senior Center back reopened for a number of things that were done. The lunch program there is proven continued to be immensely popular. Great facility, great staff team there. Next slide.
If I'm going to pause just for one moment here, I have two quick notes for you. One, I believe I saw there's a question in the chat. Do you prefer questions at the end, or are you okay taking them throughout?
I'll take it right now. I just opened it. Sorry, Tony, thanks for the Schoolhouse Rock reference. Yep, amen. Question, I may have missed it. Racket court explanation. Does the city offer lessons in pickleball or tennis? Great question. We do offer tennis lessons through our recreation programs. We do not offer pickleball lessons per se. We do have indoor pickleball at the community center. And then, as I mentioned, we striped 6 pickleball courts, 2 at Tibbetts Valley Park, 2 at Central Park, and 2 at, boy, why is the name escaping me, over in South Park area. Muirwood Park, sorry for that. And those are really just available as drop-in courts. But yes, tennis lessons, no pickleball lessons. Schoolhouse Rec, can you tell me more? Yes, absolutely. So Schoolhouse Rec is a before and after school program we run at the community center, a place for elementary school kids to have some before school care. We partner with the school district, and transportation is provided to Issaquah Valley Elementary, and then next door at Clark Elementary. Those same students then have the opportunity to be transported back to the community center for after school care, mix of recreation programming, homework time, etc.
Oh, go ahead, Lorna. Sorry.
Can you tell me approximately how many students are enrolled, and also if it's a partnership with the before and after school care, is there a preference given, or is there scholarships associated with this to cost? Pretty much trying to find out if it's the same program as a school and you're kind of helping host it at your facility, or if it's a separate program with a cost and the way students can qualify to join the program.
Great question. So
there's a huge need in our area.
Yeah, there is a huge need, and some of this is in response to that huge need. So this is not, the school district's aware of this program. It's not the same program in terms of the before and after school program. We do have scholarships available. I was going to mention that at the end of our meeting, and Monica's aware of this. Next Tuesday night, we're looking at making some modifications to our traditional scholarship program to really, in many ways, expand its availability to the community. But yes, the before and after school program is definitely a program that would qualify for that financial assistance.
And how many students and how is this advertised?
Yeah, so it's advertised through our recreation guide. It's also advertised at those two schools since transportation is available at those two schools. So it's on site on our website. You can find information on that. We have, in terms of enrollment, roughly 20 students in the morning and roughly on average about 30 students in the afternoon. You bet. So if there's no more questions, I'll continue on and we can keep taking questions as we go.
And with that, Jeff, I will continue. I promise I will get you to the next slide. I just wanted, and you've been doing such an amazing job in having a great pace, but just reminding everyone that we have Spanish interpretation live going on now as we had Christina join us. So just be mindful and speak clearly and slow down and pause frequently. But I think your pace has been great. So I believe, and then I also invite interpreters to let us know if we are going too fast.
Thank you. Good subtle hint. All right. Oh, the Human Services team within our investments in people. Again, probably something you're very familiar with, but in 2021, we were really starting this department as Monica has done such a great job of coming on as the manager. We welcomed on board Hannah and Amir and Marisol as well as part of that team. Their work and the work and really the broadening the investment the city's making in human services couldn't happen at a more important time given the pandemic and now some of the continued work needed and investment work needed post-pandemic. Don't know that we're post-pandemic yet, but someday. Hats off to all of you. The establishment of the Equity Board was such an important step in the work and in I think the strategic approach we're trying to take with human services. The establishment of a series of community cultural conversations was another great step last year. With the diversification and the expansion of our human services team, how we're able to respond to homelessness and what our outreach strategy looks like has certainly been able to be broadened as well. And then the human services team in many ways is a collaborator with nonprofits, but also such a key collaborator with other departments within the city. The work that we're doing and really the bridge I think we're providing to both our partners in police, certainly the partners in park maintenance, as I mentioned earlier with our park ranger, and how we meet individuals that might be in need within our parks. But then another terrific example is our municipal court. Issaquah Municipal Court has started a community court program that really couldn't happen without the partnership and the great work of Marisol and the human services team in really being coordinators and collaborators of that community court program.
Are you taking questions?
I am. I was just looking at those. Ray's question on the demographics changing in a manner that has impacted planning significantly. Ray, are you asking that from a sort of a park planning standpoint?
Jeff, I'm asking it as a recent resident of Issaquah, having moved here from kind of the downtown Seattle corridor. So there's a lot of obvious services towards seniors in the area, but with organizations like Costco building a huge facility here, I would assume there's going to be a different type of demography that the parks need to address. So I was just curious if that impacts your planning in any way.
Yes, in a big way. So we in 2018 we the council adopted the city's first park strategic plan, and really looking at that and aligning demographics with both investment needs within our park system. How do we need to position our parks to really meet the needs and interests of those demographics? So yes, very much so. And then both really on the recreation programming end as well. Great question.
Thank you.
And Tony's question in regards to homelessness outreach, is it reactive or proactive? Great question. I would say a bit of both would be probably the best way to put it. As we're, I think, really in some ways formalizing what that approach is. I think it's both that mix, Tony, of meeting people where they're at. If we notice an encampment, it's really through the park ranger, through Amir, establishing that relationship and really earning trust through that relationship to get them connected to services. From a proactive standpoint, how we really invest our grant funds. I think Monica will probably speak to that better than I will, and especially as we get into our human services strategic plan that's going to be going in front of council as a first draft next week. How we make proactive and strategic investments in the housing continuum to look at sort of preventative ways of meeting people and their needs before it gets to that situation. So a bit of both. Monica, do you want to add anything to that?
Well said, Jeff. Thank you so much. Perhaps if helpful, I can provide a quick example of the most recent endeavor in being proactive in reaching to our homeless folks in Issaquah. Just a few weeks ago, planning and knowing that we had some severe weather coming our way, we connected with the homeless folks that we knew in our community, and we were able to safely and securely shelter them away from the really cold weather in a partnership with Motel 6. So they spent a couple of weeks there. And so I think that was one proactive way. We know that resources are very limited and we don't have permanent housing options due to long wait lists. But definitely that's one example in which we are trying to also be proactive and not just reactive in our outreach. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Monica. It's a great example. Continuing on our quick tour here, the arts group and how we really invest in people through the arts. Shakespeare in the Park, I think much like the concerts, we saw record attendance at Confluence Park this year. Wooden O Theater Group is an entity we partner with. If any of you have seen Wooden O shows, they do an amazing job of modernizing Shakespeare and sort of bringing it into the now in a very sort of diverse, eclectic, yet very respectful way to Shakespeare. That's like, I told my wife, this was several years ago, we went to one, and I whispered over to her halfway through and I said, I finally get it. Having read Shakespeare all those years, it's like it made sense. So anyways, great example there. Sorry for the personal note. Chalk Art Festival is something we do every year. You see the photo there to the right. If any of you in August notice how colorful the Rainier Trail gets down by the community center, that's thanks to the Chalk Art Festival and many young hands who display their artistic skills on the sidewalk. We took an approach with how we fund grants a little bit differently through the pandemic, and rather than doing one grant phase, we broke it into 2 grant phases that the Art Commission oversees. Saw a lot of positive response from the art community in that really helping them to be a little bit more nimble in what they can provide through the pandemic. Looking forward, it might even be a grant pattern that we'll continue to hold on to, just because we think it could be a more equitable way of making investments in those funds. A new mural was created down on a tunnel on the East Lake Sammamish Trail. If any of you take that trail, the tunnel through Southeast 62nd, you'll see this very colorful fox and a couple of other forms of wildlife that you see around us. Really cool mural. And then holiday lighting, another example, if you've noticed, Front Street being lit up a little bit more through the winter season. That's some of the work that the arts team has been doing. Next slide. Yeah, thanks. No real comment there. Hey, COVID is real, and we continue to encourage people to recreate in a healthy, responsible way. That's my tour. Again, I just can't thank enough the chance to give you this overview. If I was to give kudos, it would kudos to an amazing team. I've had the privilege of working here for a little over 5 years now, and again, the diversity of skills, the diversity of perspective, and the diversity of services that we're able to provide to the community are, it's a great team to work with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for that overview. It was fantastic. I am so excited about all the things that you've done and really looking forward to what you're going to do in the coming months. I think Monica, are we ready to go to the next agenda item?
Yes, I believe so. Unless yes, thank you so much, Jeff.
Can I'm so sorry. Can I make one more comment? And I sort of teased it up, and I think it was Lorna's question. Thank you so much, Lorna, for your question about Schoolhouse Rec. But yeah, we are taking a look at our recreation scholarship program that again has been really successful. I'll make a quick plug for what we're going to talk to council about, but I would love the opportunity, as you're all thinking your work plan, to maybe come back to you and talk a little bit more specifically and really put an equity lens on what we're trying to do with that scholarship program. Historically, that program has been dependent upon donations and the amount of money we have to give out. What we're going to be talking to council about is sort of updating that scholarship program, and rather than being dependent upon donations to determine how many scholarships we can give, to turn it into what we're calling a fee reduction model, where it would allow us the opportunity for qualifying individuals who qualify for a scholarship for us to just discount what the program fee is. And it would allow us, I think, a much more accessible scholarship program. So that's a conversation we're going to start having with council next week. Again, just love, I so love this group, and the opportunity it gives us to I think, just bounce some ideas off of in terms of how we think of equitable and inclusive delivery of programs. So I'm done now. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Jeff,
Jeff. And I think Lorna still has a question for you, Jeff. Lorna, would you mind coming off mute?
Yes. Thank you so much. Jeff, is there any way for the program to grow? You said 20 in the morning and 30 in the evening for both Clark and IVE. So I was just wondering, what is the potential for growth? Because I know all the schools have huge waiting lists.
Yeah, great question. Yes, there is capacity within the community center. Part of that expansion has to do with transportation, right, and how we work with the school district. But yes, it is not currently at capacity. So there's room to grow.
And it looks like Kelly has a question as well.
Thank you. I am a beneficiary of so many of these programs, and I'm so, I praise this community regularly at what it provides for all of us. I had a distinct question, and it may not be able to be answered today, so I understand that. We could always come back to it. But I would be interested in knowing the process for deciding what gets done in the community, the parks, the art. I mean, I know there's an arts commission, but the rest of it, like, for example, right near me, Memorial Park just got the new athletic equipment. And I've always wondered, they're fabulous, but I've wondered how much was the community involved in giving feedback in that, and if there's a set process or if it's different all the time.
I love it, Kelly. Yes. So it starts, I mean, yes, there's community interaction on so many levels. It starts with the park strategic plan, where we really try and get a sense of what are the needs and how does this community want to invest into its park system. And then as we do specific park improvements, we also embark on a really robust community engagement process for each of those specific projects. In fact, we're about to launch on a planning effort, a community engagement effort around Memorial Park, and sort of taking a look at Memorial Park, Depot Park, Pedestrian Park, all those public spaces that serve Old Town. How do we create, what kind of long-term vision does the community want to have for perhaps improving those spaces and making them even more usable and, quite frankly, more supportive of Front Street. So you'll be hearing more about that effort through a variety of community engagement ways. So yeah, the planning effort is, we're not building these parks for ourselves, right? It really is the community system, and how do we find ways to interface.
And what's interesting and what is useful for us is which communities get to talk, right?
You're right. And how do we make sure? And again, that's where we're not. How do I say this? I want, there's opportunities for us to learn and to improve, quite frankly, and how we are making those engagement opportunities truly universal. So so spot on in your comments.
I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And I had a question as well, but I am going to jump to Christina's comment. She says that everything sounds great. She loves everything that's being done for the community. On the other hand, I would like to know about what those who receive scholarships do for society. And I'm wondering, Jeff, do we need a little more clarification on that question?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah, sort of what's the public benefit? Is that the question, Hillary?
Hola, buenas noches a todos. Mi pregunta va enfocada porque creo que es importante que no solo se dé dinero o se les dé cosas a la gente, sino que la gente se involucre y
Yeah, the
también
thing is,
ayude a mejorar la sociedad.
Yeah, the thing is, I agree that people should be afforded money and funds to be able to do things, but at the same time, I would like to see that those who get those grants give something back to society. How it's more of a reciprocal type of relationship.
Yeah, Christine.
¿Están haciendo actualmente algo similar? O sea, ¿las personas solo reciben el dinero, las becas y es todo? ¿O hay alguna contribución que se reciba de ellos hacia la sociedad, hacia todos nosotros?
Yeah, so my question is, there's people who get grants and scholarships and funds to receive all these benefits, but then on the other hand, is there something that society in general is getting back from those people, from the people receiving all this funds?
That's a great comment and a great question, Christina. I guess I would take a first chance at responding that by saying the recreation programs that this city chooses to invest in provide a public good to the whole community, and that we think that connection through recreation, connection through learning, lifelong learning that happens, social interactions that happen through those recreation investments do provide a public good. The scholarship program allows the fee associated not to become a financial barrier. And we would want to make sure that that access to those recreation investments are equitable for all residents in Issaquah. And understanding, I think in the end, the public good is what those all participants in those recreation programs, whether they have scholarships or don't have scholarships, are garnering through those community investments. I love this. We can really, let's get into some theoretical.
Thank you, Jeff. That was
Great
such
question.
a good response. And yes, and definitely, Christina has really good questions. So thank you all for giving us an opportunity. And I wanted to ask if anyone else had any questions before I pose mine. Everyone's so quiet tonight. All right. Well, then I'll ask. I just wanted to know if the project roadmap was made public, so that we could kind of see what would be happening next in our community. I think that everything that you guys are doing is amazing, and I'd like to know what's coming next and how we can participate.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can make sure you all get a copy of that. But on our website is the park strategic plan that lays out really the recommendations and maps out the short-term investments that the city's prioritizing. That is coupled with what's called the 6-year CIP. There's an acronym, the 6-year capital improvement plan. I can get you a copy of that shows the park and trail investments that the city council is strategically planning and making those investments. So that's really, those two start to show that roadmap, Shay, of what we're doing. And then specifically, I'll be sharing with the park board. I can certainly share with you as well, and Monica's aware of this, sort of our major work plan items, work plan for the year that shows the specific park projects that we're going to be working on this year in 2022. So I think all three of those can sort of show you the roadmap from big to little.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. And before we close out with Jeff, does anyone else have any questions, comments? Issaquah is doing some amazing things. All right. Then thank you so much, Jeff, for giving us that overview. We really appreciate it. We encourage you to stay on if you'd like. If it's getting a little late for you, feel free to drop off. But next we have Monica, who's going to go over our cultural and religious holidays.
Thank you very much, Shay, and board members. And Jeff, thank you so much again for being with us tonight. You will hear from different department leaders in the upcoming months as we continue to kind of like dive deeper into what does the city do and the work that is being done in the various departments. But moving on to our next agenda item, I have the pleasure to talk with you a little bit about some city acknowledged cultural and religious holidays. And before I start, I would like to acknowledge you already had a chance to meet Dale, who's also part of the equity team, but we also have Matt Ellis with us, also part of the equity team. And actually, Jeff is also on the equity team at the city. Matt had previously done some work internally on doing some research on the religious holidays and cultural holidays that perhaps the city should be aware of. So he's also available here for questions. Not that I want to put him on the spot, but I know he did a lot of great work. And Tisha, who's you now know, she's a familiar face with us, our city clerk. She has done some great work on it as well. So I'm gonna just jump in really quick with a brief presentation. And while I open the PowerPoint here, I just want to mention that this is part one of what I hope to be a two-part conversation on acknowledging cultural and religious holidays at the city. And I also want to mention that this is different than federal holidays that the city acknowledges when people have time off. So the goal in this project is really to create a list of cultural and religious holidays that the city should take into consideration when scheduling public meetings. This is really a way for us to formalize our commitment to respecting other communities and other religions than the ones, let's say, respected in federal holidays, and really respect and promote inclusion, and really make every effort to avoid scheduling public meetings on dates that conflict with such holidays. So why do we want to acknowledge religious holidays? Because, as I said, really it promotes respect and inclusivity. But also we acknowledge as a city that certain holidays are observed by the federal government, such as, let's say, Christmas Day, whereas other religious holidays that are equally as relevant and important for certain religious communities are not observed. And so perhaps there are times when out of respect for that holiday, certain communities cannot work or cannot participate in public meetings. And therefore, if we have public meetings during those times, then we limit their chances to participate and provide input. The approach that we took in kind of proposing an initial list for you for consideration was really our staff did research, and we asked other jurisdictions locally and regionally on their approach. So we did some research on what others are doing. We looked at the Issaquah demographics and the communities that we have in Issaquah in particular. We also contacted directly some representatives of various religions and cultural groups here in Issaquah. I actually reached out to some of the equity board members as well. And then with gathering all of that information, then we created an initial list of proposed holidays that perhaps we can consider implementing and then reevaluating, right? I think our approach at the city often is we don't want to have perfection be in the way of making progress. So perhaps our first list is not going to be the perfect list, but we like to pilot things. Let's try it, see how it works, see what's working, see what's not, reevaluate, and keep making improvements. So some examples of what other jurisdictions are doing, and you have in the packet actually, we linked information to the Washington State Office of Superintendent of Public Instructions. They have a comprehensive list of different holidays that they observe. Our Issaquah School District also has a great list of holidays that they observe and they're mindful of when conducting public meetings or different school-related meetings. The kind of closest city, if you if you believe it or not, the closest city that we were able to research as having implemented a policy on cultural and religious holidays is the city of Berkeley in California. And actually we use that as kind of like a starting point for our work. And then also examples from the University of Missouri. And there are certainly other examples. These are just a few of them. And I think this is where we probably would want your input and feedback on what other research should we be doing. Next, as I mentioned, we looked at the Issaquah demographic, and just a brief highlight. Based on the most recent census, our estimated population is about 40,000. 23% of our population is Asian, about a little bit over 2% African American, a little bit over 5% are 2 or more races, and 9% of our community are Hispanic or Latino. We also tried to look a little bit about to the religious groups in Issaquah. We found some information that about 38%, close to 39% of residents living in Issaquah self-identify as religious. And then here you have broken down by percentages, the various religious affiliations and groups. And then here on this screen, you have abbreviated list of some of the most important holidays that we considered using as a starting point. I want to add that after reaching out to some community members to this list, there are a couple of other just holidays that they proposed that we should be adding. For example, Hanukkah was proposed as being added as a holiday, just not necessarily because it's mainly because perhaps people would like to spend time with family during that holiday rather than attending public meetings. However, this is kind of like an initial list of those holidays that we would love to hear from you on. What are your thoughts? What are your suggestions? Is this a good starting point? Are we missing holidays that we should add to this list? Are there others that we should add, consider, and whatnot? So as I said, I'm going to pause so we can have a conversation. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm hoping that this is just the very first introductory conversation. Let's start brainstorming, let's start thinking, and then let's all do some research between now and next meeting, and then come back with a more finalized list for perhaps adoption for next month if we feel that we are ready to at least start observing those holidays. And when I say observing, is really when our various city departments are considering public engagement meetings, board meetings, or council meetings, for us to be mindful and not to schedule those meetings on religious holidays. So questions for you tonight: is this a good list of holidays the city should consider when scheduling public meetings? Are there major holidays missing? I'm sorry, I'm having technical issues here. Are there other things we should consider? What is the right balance between the need to conduct multiple public meetings and holidays observed? You did hear also earlier tonight from a community member who expressed kind of like concern or question about multiple public meetings. What is the right balance with that? How can we be inclusive and respectful and still conduct community engagement with the community, since that's the core of what we do? As a note, you heard about the multiple boards and commissions we have in the Parks Department. The city overall has 16 boards and commissions. So we have a busy schedule, and I'm going to invite Tisha. She can tell you more. Like every week we have several meetings, so there likely be interference. What's the right balance, though?
And Monica, I'm going to stop you for just a quick second here because I know we do have a few questions. And Ray, would you like to come off mute and ask your question, or I can ask it for you?
Sure, I'm happy to. Monica, going back to that slide with the 40,000 plus residents, there's a big chunk that's Asian. Two questions regarding that. One is with outside of those listed, are the others, what are they, Caucasian that are, so now this comprises what, 30-40%? So is the other 60%?
Yes, about 65% of the population is white.
Okay. And then, so my question that I put in the chat is that large chunk of 23.15% Asian, is there a breakdown of those? And the reason I ask that is because, you know, Asia is a very large geography. They could be Muslim, they could be Buddhist, they could be Catholic. Curious about that.
We don't have necessarily a breakdown of those. We can do additional research. That's a great question to try to get deeper information and more depth information on that. At this time, we don't have that broken down into smaller pieces. We rely on census data, and that's, again, we can do a little bit more research, but then the reliability of the data is going to be a little bit harder. Actually, I would love to see if the school district, I know that it has some information because they track information on their family. So I know that we reached out and we contacted them to secure information on that level. But that too, at least we can have some information, but it's mainly at the school district level, which includes more than Issaquah. So.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a great comment, and we'll look more, but I don't know if
Thank you.
we'll have that more.
Great question, Ray. We appreciate that. And then we have Preeti, and then Elisa will follow.
Yeah, so this is Preeti. I appreciate all of the effort that went into producing the list, the proposed list of holidays. And so my question is really, like, I was curious about the list that was generated, this proposed list, and I just wanted to know a little bit more about how, like, what criteria might have been used for this particular list to bubble to the top, because, for example, yeah, I was wondering about Hanukkah as well, and then I know there's other, like, Ramadan, and then Holi is another Hindu holiday, and so I was just curious about what made these float to the top, so I could understand and maybe be thinking along that same with the same logic or criteria.
Right. Thank you so much, and that's another great question. We were just having a conversation on this earlier tonight. I think this is more of a generic starting point that I think it would be great for us to customize more to what Issaquah's needs are. Because we didn't find other jurisdictions closer than the city of Berkeley, we kind of like stole their list as a starting point. But as you mentioned, Holi, it's something definitely that is a holiday that's with 23% of the population being Asian, that definitely would make it more specific to Issaquah. And I see that Tisha can also provide a response to this. So would love to hear your thoughts on this, Tisha.
Yeah, and another thing that we looked at when creating this list were holidays that had significant work restrictions. And that is one of the reasons that Hanukkah wasn't listed on this initial list. So Monica cited the University of Missouri. They have a really comprehensive list of cultural and religious holidays, and they identify those with significant work restrictions. So not every holiday listed is classified as such. But the majority are, and that was one of the criteria we used. As Monica was explaining, we're trying to find a balance between recognizing holidays that our community members might be celebrating and recognizing, but also recognizing the city has a lot of community boards and of course the city council, our governing board, so wanting to ensure we still have some capacity to meet during weeknights and do the work of the city. So we're grateful for your input and thoughts.
Thank you, Tisha. And going back to what Preeti was saying, Ramadan was actually added as we received input that we should consider Ramadan, the beginning of Ramadan, because it does have work restrictions and the sunset time during Ramadan. Thank you. Other questions and comments?
Yes, Elisa, are you ready?
Yep, sure. I have two questions. One is, have we defined the scope of the events that would not take place on the holidays that we're identifying? So just not necessarily the specific events, but the scope. Like, is it just meetings? Is it what types of activities that would be included? And then the second question is, I really appreciate the use of the data and trying to use the data to drive the decision. And I'm wondering if there will be an opportunity to actually ask the community. With technology today, we can easily survey and ask people, is this a holiday when, is important to you to not be included in an event like this on that day? Other holidays are great holidays, but maybe, are not such that people are concerned about having a meeting that day. Whatever the case may be. So I'm wondering if there's a way if we would be able to expand that to really talk to the Issaquah community to find out what's important to them.
This has such great questions and comments. And so, so I'm going to start with your second one, which, yes, like opportunities to conduct more community engagement, right? And perhaps, yeah, I love we can, like you mentioned, either a survey or either this equity board, perhaps as early as next meeting, conduct a community meeting where you hear from the community and we invite the community at large. I think at a small scale, we started connecting with different community members and asking for input on the holiday list, but we can certainly think about having kind of like a small convening or a larger convening and hear from the community. So that's definitely an option. And also to your first question, if I understood it correctly, regarding the scope, I believe, and here I would love to hear more from Tisha again. My understanding is that yes, it's strictly for meetings and just being mindful, let's say, not to schedule public meetings, and that includes sometimes when we conduct community engagement meetings for various, let's say, Jeff was talking earlier about, let's say, the dog tour park, and if there's a community engagement, and when we want to hear from the community on where to put the next dog park, then we would be mindful not to schedule a meeting on that holiday. Or let's say if the Human Services Commission is meeting on at the beginning of Ramadan, for example, then to be mindful to postpone that meeting. So my understanding is that that's the scope. Did I answer though your question? Because I'm not sure.
You did. I'm sorry, I did have one other question. I'll just throw it out there, which was, we talked about religious holidays, and I think there are probably other holidays that may have more of a cultural significance than necessarily religious, and wondering if we're including those as well.
Just as Tisha said earlier today, we can certainly consider including them. We were hoping to start somewhere, to start smaller perhaps, and then see what the impact is. I think with the religious holidays, like focus heavily on the religious holidays and see how that works and the impact that it has on multiple meetings, and then consider expanding to other cultural holidays as well. But certainly, again, we want to hear what makes more sense. It's finding that balance, right? Tisha, is there anything that you would like to add here?
Not necessarily, even though I was getting the sense there are a few on this list, or at least some that seem to have, like Diwali, that it seemed that it was fairly broadly recognized by multiple religions, and Dias de los Muertos is, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly, is also included on the list. But that's a good consideration and something we didn't extensively look at in creating this.
Such great questions and comments. Thank you. Sorry, Shay, go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, I'm really enjoying this. I love the engagement. We also had, it looks like a question from Christina. Christina, would you like for me to go ahead and say your question, or would you like the interpreters to go ahead and do that?
Está bien. Puedo decirlo. What about the people who are not religious? How can they be included in the society? Did you think about it, or just I'm thinking about it and I don't know? Did you include them?
Yeah. Thank you, Christina. So I'm thinking that if for the purpose of creating a list where we wouldn't schedule public meetings, I would think that if people are not religious, perhaps there might not be meetings that conflict or holidays that conflict with public meetings, at least for this purpose. But I don't know. I would need to think about. And I see Lorna has her hand up. Maybe you have thoughts on this.
I noticed you have two dates, Kwanzaa and also you have Lunar New Year, and both of those days are cultural celebrations rather than religious celebrations. So I believe that that does cover it. And I actually created the school district's religious and holiday calendar. And so I did a lot of work when I did that. And in interviewing more than 30 families in trying to come up with these dates, I made sure I represented and interviewed families that represented the majority. We have 25 major languages, and so we looked at all the languages and all the cultures that went with the languages. And I try to make sure I represented all of those cultures in my interviews and asked them what days significantly impacted student learning. And also I asked staff what days impacted staff attendance at school. And that's what I used as my basis in creating our calendar. I don't have, as you will notice, any summer holidays and days that are already non-school days in December in our calendar. So that's why there might be some differences. And finally, one of the biggest feedbacks, because as the city is doing the past year and a half, I've been amending my calendar based on feedback from staff and from parents. And one of the things that I realized is that I did not put as many Christian and other some Christian holidays, including I hadn't put in Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. And so that's where we got most of our feedback from. And given that the data for the city does have a lot of different Christian groups, I'm just wondering if we are accounting for some of those, because that's where I did see, because I think as our district is getting more diverse, we're noticing that there's an assumption that we just have to go to different cultures and different religions, non-Christian. And I think we do need to realize that we have to educate, or at least I realized others, that within the Christian community, we have different celebrations, and how do I include that?
Thank you for that, Lorna. That's such a good point. And it looks like Christina has another question, but Christina, before you start, is there anyone else who has a question or comment that they'd like to pose to the group? All right, Christina, please.
Bueno, está relacionado a lo mismo. Esta pregunta va enfocada también a los a los indios americanos o todas estas, los nativos, cómo es que se relacionan con los que somos religiosos o extranjeros. Tengo esa duda, entonces me gustaría saber más al respecto.
So yeah, what I'd like to ask is about the Native Americans. Is that part, are they included in consideration to the religious festivities, and also other immigrants are also considered in this list?
Excellent questions and comments. And no, we have not directly reached out to the Native communities to ask about that. So great input and feedback, and other immigrant communities. Thank you. Other questions and feedback before we talk a little bit about next steps? Go ahead, Alisa.
I just wanted to add that I think it's a great approach that we want to have a starting point, and that we're going to be flexible to get feedback and to potentially expand the list as needed. I just wanted to add that it's probably important, and somebody can tell me if I have this wrong, but it's probably important to also let the community know that. I think just to avoid the possibility of, we're trying to be inclusive, but to not be offensive by excluding someone whose voice we just didn't make it onto the initial list right away, just so people understand this is a starting point and let us know if we're missing something. That's all.
Great point, Elisa. And Preeti, I think you also had a comment.
Yes, so I was just, reflecting on some of the questions and comments, and I know it seems like this list has a very narrow use in terms of a list of dates where where community or public meetings aren't recommended. But I think there's this danger around having a list like this available where people, for very good reasons, certain holidays would be missing because they aren't necessarily recommended to be scheduled around. But I think there's a danger in not having a fuller set of holidays. So I'm almost wondering if could be more like a table where there's, a comprehensive list of holidays by various cultures and religions. And then maybe there's certain criteria where, you can indicate, oh, they're just celebrations or days where, public events are not recommended and, various things like that. Because otherwise, I do think that this could be easily misinterpreted if we aren't careful.
Thank you, Preeti. And Matt, feel free to jump in, please, to go ahead and explain a little further.
Sure, and I think it might have morphed since we originally started the scope for this project, but the initial thought for this was that we would put this in our Outlook folders, city staff's Outlook folders throughout the city. So that way we're not trying to find a list somewhere and cross-check it. It would just pop up automatically on our Outlook calendars and say, oh, we shouldn't be scheduling an event or neighborhood meeting or whatever we're trying to do and be supportive of the community. Is not, I guess there's a couple different ways we could approach it. There's that where it's more of the internal look, where it's for us to be cognizant of events and holidays, or it can also be a celebratory thing that's more of an external thing where we're showing support to the community. So I guess there's just it depends on what the use of the events and holidays calendar is, and I guess that's a question for you guys. But internally, our thought was that it would be an internal piece of tool.
No, and Matt, I think that's a great idea because to Preeti's point, it could easily be misinterpreted, and our intention is not to exclude anyone. It's more so just to be aware so that our meetings don't interfere with their events or anyone's events for that matter. So we want to try to adjust to that. And I do think that that's a better way to handle it, just to avoid the backlash. Does anyone else have a comment or a question? Yes, Kelly, please come off mute.
This was kind of, I don't know, it emotes for me. And I'll tell you, I think I've figured out what it is. I think that there's a framing that I'm not personally knowledgeable enough to know the difference between things that require no work and cultural events, because there are a lot of cultural events in many, many communities. And it feels to me like some of these are cultural and some of these are religious. And I think that it is really important to get that defined, the two, that they are different, and that if we have to go to religious leaders, we do it. I'll help, because I think that will get confusing if we're doing cultural events sometimes. And we say a meeting isn't going to happen this day because of it. And then other times we say that it, somebody else's event is going to get scheduled on top of. So I'm just encouraging to get that really clearly defined. And then once you do, to not be afraid to post it. I am so proud of the work this city is doing. This is incredible work. You can't find it anywhere else, right? Post it so that other people know. Not yet, maybe it's a year away, but be proud of that work and share it. We all need it once it's gotten more clarified.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That was such a great comment. So I appreciate that. Does anyone else have comments? Oh, yes, please, Megan.
Kelly, I literally had the exact same thought as you. I think we could really use these holidays to not only respect other people, but also educate the predominantly white population and really expose our community to other cultures. And I think this could really diversify us even more. So I think posting on social media, holding more events to kind of cater to those widely celebrated holidays like I'm going to mispronounce it, the Day of the Dead, for example, and doing more events like that. So I hope there's room in the project where we could do more events like that.
Thank you so much, Megan. Does anyone else have any comments? I think this conversation is so great. Oh, man. All right. Well, if we are ready to move on, Monica, would you like to go ahead to our next item?
Yes, in just a moment. I would love to a little bit summarize and kind of like make sure that we know the next steps. So on one end, so much great conversation and great feedback and input. So appreciate this group and just love collaborating with everyone. So what I heard, especially in the last few comments, I think there's a need to, yes, let's expand the list, but also perhaps prioritize and have like, I'm almost imagining like color-coded or like explanations where we have the, let's say, strict religious holidays that interfere with work. And then those would be the core of the ones that maybe will say, absolutely, please do not, or consider really do not scheduling meetings, and then expand that to a multitude of cultural holidays that, hey, we can celebrate, we can observe this holiday and celebrate it. But it's perhaps on the hierarchy of really we cannot schedule a meeting. It's not necessarily that you cannot, but if you want to do a community engagement, perhaps you can go to this celebratory holiday instead and do a community engagement there, right? So that's what I'm hearing in kind of like doing the larger and expanding that. I also heard from all of you, perhaps definitely very great input in like reaching to certain specific pockets of cultural groups in our community. And then last but not least, I heard a couple of times mentioning like more community engagement. And that's where I have a question for you tonight, because in terms of next step, what we were going to propose is let's all of us do our research. Want to hear from you. Perhaps you can send us your feedback if you are reaching out to others, or if you know others, send us the feedback. We'll incorporate, we'll do more research, we'll incorporate it and come back to you with a more advanced list for next time to consider approving and adopting. But we can also just pause, still do all of this, but based on your feedback, we can also try to do a more community engagement. And so I'm asking you, should we consider that instead or in addition? Or do you think that if we all do our research and connect outside of this meeting and come back with a list next time, will that suffice? I think that's where I need direction from all of you. Perhaps hand up, hand down, kind of like my work, like, or Shay, please consider other. Yes.
Yes. I really like the idea of the community engagement piece and maybe figuring out a way to pull them in, whether it be a next door poll or um, something that allows our community to contribute to what they think may have higher priority or what may affect our ability to meet on certain days. Because I know that many of us aren't natives to Washington, and that could potentially put us at a disadvantage on how to connect with more community members, or limit us in some ways. Or at least for me, that's the situation because I'm still fairly new to Washington, and th- I'm limited to the people that are around me, and honestly, it's not in the high numbers here. So in that respect, I definitely think that if we can get some kind of poll into the public eye, that might give us a better idea of how to prioritize these days and where to put them. And I love the idea of a color coded system to let us know kind of where we're putting all of that. Preeti, please.
Yeah, so I guess, when I think about community engagement, it sounds like there are some pockets of robust community engagement already happening, across the city. And I'm also worried about like over surveying the community and, going to community members for really, basic questions when, their time is precious as well. So I'm thinking, like what a different model for that could be, and maybe looking to our, community-based organizations, some that serve, different communities across our region, and maybe reaching out to some staff at those types of community-based organizations just to see, like, for holidays for the community you serve, which ones, and maybe, we can come with a standard list, like which ones are that do not schedule over those dates, religious holidays, do not schedule over, which ones are holidays, which, would be nice to acknowledge if there is a meeting, but it's okay to schedule events on those days. And maybe that could be an efficient way to get to a list that's organized with those nuances that we've discussed.
Thank you so much, Preeti, for that. And actually, so far we reached out to 3 communities. We reached out to the Baha'i community, to community members from the Islamic community, and a Jewish community member. And so I definitely, I think it's very doable for us to continue to reach out individually to certain groups and ask for their feedback, because we really received valuable information, kind of like, you may want to consider this over this. And definitely that is a way to do it. And we also welcome you as board members, if you know community members or community groups like that, to engage with them. So that's certainly a possibility between now and next month. Does that sound like, for the rest of the board members, like one approach to really directly reach out to community members instead of creating a survey?
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
Okay. This way it also feels more meaningful because it's directly reaching out, right? And we go exactly to the source. Okay, so we can certainly do that. We'll reach out. I'm gonna probably reach back out to some of you all as well. But then we'll conduct more research. We would love to hear more from you. We'll come back next month and with a more comprehensive list, and we'll see who we were able to engage with at that point, and if we are ready to start with a brief adoption of a list, or if we want to extend it because we may need additional community engagement or engagement with certain community groups at that point. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yes, I think that is. And I'm sorry, Elisa, you had a comment as well?
Sure. I think, and maybe for next time, so I'm sure we're probably heading over time on this topic. But I would, something that Lorna mentioned about having gone out and talked to a very large group or population of people about the list and about a list about the holidays and cultural celebrations. I would love to hear more about the approach that was used there to gather that information, maybe in another session.
And with your permission, I would love to also connect with Lorna to kind of like get some lessons learned from all of the work that she conducted. Go ahead, Lorna. Apologies.
It was a huge project. It took up a lot of my time, and I'm very, very happy to share all that I learned, and I'm still learning. And just so you know, I literally update that list that's on the website all the time. And what Matt was talking about, how to post it and share it, we have an internal website, but it's not very widely used. And so a lot of staff wasn't seeing it. And so that's why we posted it on the district website, just so that it was more visible and there was transparency with families, because we learned that a lot of families didn't know that it was okay to call in as an excused absence. And so we were trying to teach them that we're giving them permission, that the staff knows. And so it was also our part of building community. And what you're talking about, you know, it's so diverse. Some are cultural, some are religious. So we do have a final column. It's kind of a table that talks about how it's celebrated, if it's a religious or if it's a cultural, to differentiate how it's going to impact, because some of it is attendance and absence the whole day, some of it is celebrations, and what that actual impact is. And finally, we are trying to contact, one of the things on my list today, this month, is to connect with McKenna Dorman, Sweet Dorman, to find out from the Snoqualmie tribe about holidays that impact Indigenous group. And also I've been trying to contact unsuccessfully some of our Hawaiian families, and we don't have a big population of Native Hawaiian that I've been able to contact within the district, because finding out specific areas is really hard, and our numbers is like, it's very low in our district. So in doing some research myself, it's how do we acknowledge and how do we honor them, and also make sure that the list is not too long, because is there something else that we add to our list? So I was trying to be authentic in making sure that it is based on conversations and requests from the families in the district. But I'm happy to talk about it another table.
Thank you so much, Lorna. And Tony also had another comment. Tony, did you want me to speak your comment, or would you like to do it?
I guess I'll go ahead and do it. So as an example as to, we may need some type of messaging on why specific holiday may not be included. I think, obviously based on community, whether it be religious or cultural holiday. I guess an example I might think of is, let's say, Washington State, Western Washington, large veteran population. I'm a veteran myself. Although I know that Veterans Day is important, but I could see some veterans saying, well, how come, why isn't Veterans Day not on the list, or something like that, or Armed Forces Day, or something like that, or D-Day or something like that. So I think we might need some messaging as to when those questions are asked, why those holidays are maybe not on the list. It's not because it's not important, but why do we as an entity are not recognizing it as a day, if that question may be asked? I'm just thinking that it might be.
No, I think that's a great suggestion. And Elisa, I saw you had a comment as well. Was that just for Tony, or did you want?
No, I mean, it was just piggybacking off of what he said. So maybe part of making that clear is for us to clearly define what are the criteria that we're using to say this holiday goes on the list and this other holiday, while important, doesn't go on the list. So that it's, just so it's very clear and transparent.
Right. Because, if we look at, let's say, the holidays that we celebrate, primarily, is basically what's considered a major holiday or what's considered a day off holiday.
And that can vary from one person to another.
It really can, absolutely. So we just got to be a little bit, I mean, everything we're talking about, I think is great. We just got to be careful about how we quantify and message it.
No, I think those are great suggestions. Does anyone else have a comment or a suggestion? Maybe a question? And thank you both for your feedback. Oh, well, I love this. I think I'm eager to see how we actually produce this list and how we get it out to the public and our communities to let them know that we're considering them when we do our meetings. So Monica, if you'd like to continue.
Thank you so much, board members. Very, very great input and feedback. Just a quick question to Tisha and Matt. I feel like I got the feedback that we needed. Do you have any questions or comments before we move to the next agenda item? No? Okay. Thank you again very much, board members. So the next agenda item, I believe it's actually Tisha, right?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for your thoughtful input on that last agenda topic. I'm back with you to seek your adoption of the Equity Board's rules and regulations, which it feels like it was more than a month ago, but it was only about a month ago that we you last met, and we talked. I provided you sort of an overview of what the rules and regulations cover. They're kind of that additional layer of provisions to help put some parameters on how you function as a group in addition to what's already in our municipal code. And tonight, I'm hoping that you will consider adopting these rules. As I mentioned to you last month, they very closely mirror the rules and regulations of many of our other advisory boards, but I do expect that you will change them over time and look forward to working with you on those changes. Tonight, this will require a formal motion be moved by one of the members, and I'll put the motion in the chat here. And then a roll call vote will need to be taken, and any regular members or alternates who are serving for regular members would have an opportunity to vote. After the rules are adopted, they'll be signed by the chair and co-chair, and we'll put a copy of them up on the board's website. I'm here if there are any questions about the rules or if anyone had any proposed changes, but otherwise I don't have a formal presentation plan tonight.
Thank you so much, Tisha. And do we need to allow everyone some time to review? Okay. Well, the proposed motion is I move to adopt the Equity Board rules and regulations as proposed. Do we have a second to that?
I second it.
Thank you, Tony. And if there is no amendments or objections to the new proposed rules and regulations, I'd like to propose that we unanimously approve those rules and regulations. Are we too soon?
Oh, Shay, pardon me. I would, and thank you. You're doing a most excellent job chairing this group. But after a motion is made and seconded, it's appropriate to just make sure there's no discussion, or ask the board if there's any discussion. And then if there's no discussion or amendments, then it's certainly appropriate to proceed to vote. I would recommend on these rules, and Monica, maybe you would be willing to call the roll. I would recommend we take a roll call vote because there's a certain vote requirement. It's not necessary at all times, but I think for your rules, that would be a good idea and give the board some practice at that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Monica, would you like to go ahead or do I need to start over?
Well, Shay, if you could just ask the board members if anyone has any discussion on this motion.
Well, here we go. Does anyone have any discussions or questions on this proposed, on our rules and regulations? All right, I think we're all set here. Monica, if you'd like to go ahead and do the roll vote.
Yes, I would love to do a roll call. And so when I call your name, just please state yes or no, yay or nay, and as you vote, whether you vote yay as a yes or nay as a no for adopting the rules and regulations. So first here is Cristina Abonsen.
Cristina Bonce, usted es su turno de votar.
Christina, this is where you would state yay or nay. If you would like to vote as yes, adopting the rules and regulations, you would say yay, or nay if you do not want to adopt the rules and regulations.
Okay, solo le estaba preguntando a Hilary. I was making a question to Hilary about the rules and regulations. That rules and regulation was were the same that you proposed in the first meeting, right? Yeah, okay, I agree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Christina. Next, Megan Richley.
Yeah. Yes, I approve of the rules and regulations.
Thank you. Alyssa Stewart.
Yay.
Thank you. Lorna Gilmore.
Yay.
Thank you. Helen is absent today. Lucrecia is also absent today. Ray Manahan.
Yay.
Thank you. Tony Curry.
You are on mute, Tony.
Just realized that. Yeah. I approve.
Thank you. And Shalanda Curry, we need to change your name officially. Shay Fleming.
Yes, yay.
Thank you. Jacob is also absent today, and Preeti is gonna vote for Helen, and Kelly's gonna vote for Lucrecia. So Preeti.
Yay.
And Kelly.
Yay.
Thank you. And I apologize, you're not voting for them or on behalf of them. You are you're stepping in as regular members for tonight. So that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Congratulations, board members. You now have rules and regulations in place.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, very good. Tisha, did you have anything else for us?
No, I don't. Thank you so much. I do realize I have some follow-up with you, which is I will be sharing our city's code of ethics with you by email so that you can read through that code and make an attestation that you've read it. So be on the lookout for that in your email. But otherwise, I'm done, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Tisha. We appreciate all your hard work in helping us understand and learn. So thank you again. If we are ready, Monica, we can go ahead and jump into our proposed engagement conversation. But I'd like to propose that we take maybe a 5-minute break because I know we've been doing a lot of stuff for a very long time. So I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to take a break. And I understand that we need to kind of vote on that. Is everyone in agreement to take maybe a 5-minute break? Yes, we got all yays. Okay, well then, the time now is 7:51. If we can have everyone back by 7:56. All right, fantastic. Thank you. Fantastic. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so now that we're realizing that we're a little close to time, so I'd like to propose that we move the community engagement conversation to the next meeting next month. Is everyone in agreement with that? All right, lots of yays. Okay, is this one of those situations where I need to ask if we unanimously? All right.
I think you're okay with this being more formal. It's just you want agreement from the board, right? It's not. I think when you have a formal vote, but yes, no, you're good. Great.
All right, fantastic. Then if everyone is in agreement, we are going to move our conversation about equity and inclusion to our next meeting. And we will move forward with having Monica update us on our city council.
Thank you very much, board members. I think the one brief update that I have for you as staff, and actually it came up a little bit earlier in the meeting tonight when Jeff did his presentation. So as part of our human services work, our team has been working in the last 6 months on a human services strategic plan. And we did not have a chance to come to you to lend an equity lens yet, just because you are in the forming stages. However, with the work of the Human Services Commission, who was so instrumental in creating the equity board, we tried to apply an equity lens to our work. What I want to update you on is that the draft plan is going to City Council this coming week. I will send you the
Monica,
packet.
I'm so sorry. For the interpreters, could you speak a little bit slower?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great reminder. So the draft strategic plan is being presented to City Council this coming week on Tuesday evening at a council study session. You're most welcome to attend the meeting if you would like, or watch the meeting. If not, certainly this is our first touch point with City Council, and we are going to ask for their feedback on whether or not we are on the right track. We are also going to ask whether or not they think that we applied an equity lens appropriately, and they may or may not ask us to come to you for feedback. Regardless of the City Council's input, we certainly would welcome you as the draft is coming out. Following the council meeting next week, we will have a 1-month community engagement process where we would love to hear from the community on the draft, and certainly we would also love to hear from you individually or as a board. So I think for now that's just the update, letting you know. I know you're not part of the forming, but certainly we would love your input on the draft. And we would love to. I'll share information, and we can invite you next month to be part of this. And that concludes my staff report for tonight. Just one brief one.
Thank you so much, Monica. We appreciate that. And I'm sure we're all excited to start some new work. We have a lot ahead of us. So thank you again for that. All right. So our next agenda item is just finding out if there's any other business or announcements. All right. Well, if there is nothing else, then I think we can move to adjournment. Am I correct in that? All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Christina, do you have something? Okay, adjourn. All right, wonderful. In that case, then we will go ahead and move to adjournment. And I'm sorry, I could use a little bit of help on this, Monica, if you don't mind. So if I'm doing this right, if all the agenda items have been addressed, which I think they have, then we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting until next month. And our next meeting is going to be on Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022, between 6 and 8 p.m.
Yes, and the only great job. The only other edit that you can add is just you're adjourning the meeting at 8:02.
All right, and we are adjourning the meeting at 8:02. Thank you all for all your contributions. We will see you all next month.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Shay, just with